Yeah, I can monitor that. Yeah. Yeah, something happened. Something happened. Yes, something happened. Yes, yes. And the time the timer is gone. The timer is gone as well. Yeah, something. Yes, yes. And the timer is gone. The timer is gone as well. Yeah, something. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself over here. So I could hear myself live as well. Maybe still. Yeah. Sorry, Edwin, we are not hearing the voice.
Sorry, Edwin.
Good evening and welcome to the first OWASP Netherlands chapter meeting of 2023. This year will feature the best of both worlds, as we're all having both physical and online meetings. Online like this one, and physical on various locations throughout the country. But first, an introduction to our team. The OWASP Netherlands team has been extended by a board in which various persons, with various qualities, I may say, are assisting us in creating more and better content for you. The team now exists of me, I'm Edwin Gooseling, the host of the night, Irfan Zantu, Jadia Preston, Jordan Pol, Martin Nobloch, Priyam Awashti, I hope I pronounced it right, and Tom Weerschel. But we're always looking for more volunteers and speakers. If you have anything you would like to share in the chapter meeting, please contact us at netherlands@owasp.org. And there's also a Google form available for you, the link of which will be published on our website if it isn't already. Then, a slight look at the agenda. The location in Dublin, there's a new OWASP Global AppSec event in February from 13 to 16. It's Dublin, so basically you can go there with your ID card, no passport required. However, subscription is required and it's unfortunately not free. Our chapter meetings, on the other hand, are participating for free. So on the 16th, there will be another virtual meeting with some various OWASP global projects, the Jew Shop and Application Security Verification Standard. Then in March, we'll have a physical meeting in Amsterdam. The exact location will be announced later, probably in the February meeting, and the topic will be API security. Then, an introduction to today's speakers. We'll have two speakers. The first is Sebastien Deleersnyder, and he's talking about the OWASP SAMM, the Software Assurance Maturity Model version 2.1, how to bootstrap and increase your software insurance. And after that, there will be room for questions. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat for Google on the YouTube. And the next speaker of today is Cate with the OWASP Security Knowledge Framework. So now over to our speakers. Seba, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Edwin, and thank you for hosting me in this first chapter meeting of the year. So it's a real honor to kick this off with the OWASP SAMM project. So let me first of all share my screen. So that works. If not, shout. All right. So let me first start with a couple of slides. So the talk here is about bootstrapping and increasing your software assurance with OWASP SAMM 2.1. So we are releasing a new version of OWASP SAMM. I'll first give a little bit of an overview of what SAMM is about for anyone who hasn't seen or heard about SAMM yet. So I'll start with that. And then I'll go over a couple of aspects that we are releasing as part of the new release, the 2.1. I'll take about 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes now, and then I'll open up the floor for questions. If you have any questions in between, please note them down in the chat or in the Q&A section of Zoom if you're in Zoom, or if you're on the YouTube live feed, put them there and we'll gather them at the end. I am Seba, or Sebastien Deleersnyder. I'm based in Belgium. We have a fine cybersecurity consulting company called Torion, where I'm CTO and co-founder. We also do some trainings with a company called Data Protection Institute, where I'm also quite busy with trainings on OWASP SAMM, amongst others, but also threat modeling and so on. And then besides professionally being busy with software security for probably like the past 20 plus years, I've also helped or started the Belgian chapter in 2005 already, and been involved in a couple of other things, but took up the role of project co-leader for OWASP SAMM together with the whole team. So I'm presenting here the output of the work of a whole lot of people who have contributed to the OWASP SAMM project. Now, what is this SAMM thing? It's one of our OWASP flagship projects. It's a maturity model. Stands for Software Assurance Maturity Model. And it provides for really a measurable but effective way for any kind of organization, big or small, to not only analyze where you are in terms of software security activities, but also to improve that and to demonstrate that. And the big advantages of SAMM is that it's measurable. It's a maturity model. It's clearly actionable because it's you'll see that the structure provides you in a way of through streams to add and improve security activities. And while the model itself is technology and I would say development methodology agnostic, it's really a really good framework to apply on any technology, any process, and any kind of organization. And I'll explain how that works. Everything you will need, you'll find on owaspsam.org. I'll show that in a couple of minutes. A little bit of the history, because we're going to 2.1, so it's already quite some years that we're working with OWASP. It actually started as Open SAMM, but we forked it towards OWASP SAMM. That's really the working name. We released 2.0 actually 2 years ago, and we're releasing 2.1 this year. Actually, next couple of weeks, maybe months, but we're aiming for weeks. We're releasing it officially. But a lot of functionality is already available. That's why I can already present some of or do a sneak preview of some of the aspects of 2.1. Now, in terms of SAMM structure, what is SAMM? SAMM is really secure development lifecycle methodology, and it's built out of 5 functions: governance, design, implementation, verification, operations. And in each of these 5 groups of functions, you have 3 security practices. In governance, it's really about setting it up, adding policy and compliance, making sure there's a good organization of your AppSec activities, there's trainings and so on. Design is focused on threat assessments and security requirements and so on. Implementation, newly added in 2.1, is really focused on build, deployment, defect management, verifications, not only testing, but also architecture requirements, testing, and so on. And operations is about incident management, but also patching in environment and operational management, taking into account your data security. Now, if I blow up the details and make this a little bit bigger, hopefully you can see this. You see the same model with the 5 business functions, and you see that each of these security practices are made out of 2 what we call streams. For instance, if we would take threat assessment, there's 2 streams in there. There's application risk profiles, like this is splitting up your applications in different buckets of high, medium, low, but also, okay, threat modeling. How do you do that? And what are the different activities that are making up this stream of adding threat modeling to your, I would say, development pipelines? And then, so for each of these security practices, you have 2 what we call streams. Now, how does a stream work and how these maturity levels work? If we take one particular security practice, in this case, it's the requirements-driven testing, second one of verification. There is an increasing level of maturity for each of these practices. Going from 0, you're not doing it, towards level 1, which is opportunistically or ad hoc doing this kind of activity. And in this case, since it's focused on doing control or doing testing, security requirements testing, it's focusing on control verification, abuse testing, opportunistically finding basic vulnerabilities and other security issues. So for this security practice, that's the level 1. For level 2, you really are going to look or discover application security risks through testing, through an implementation review. So you're focusing on what's really important for your application, deriving that from test cases and so on. And then a level 3 is maintaining that level and learning from that and putting or getting the outputs towards feeding into other security activities in the model. And in this case, it means that everything in terms of bug fixes, you do regression testing, you learn from that, you do maintenance and so on. So that's the maturity level. So you actually have 3 levels, level 1, 2, and 3, an increasing level of maturity. Understand that for every organization, there's a right level of maturity. You don't need to aim for level 3 maturity for all your security practices for every kind of organization. You need to align that with your own typical organization. In terms of streams, like I said, there's control verification. In this case, a little bit like the positive testing of, okay, what does this work as it's supposed to be working? And the abuse case testing in this particular security practice. And then if you go towards, okay, so you have the streams and then you have the activities. And so the activities are made up or are described in each of these streams. And so control verification is testing for standard security controls, like there's authentication work, there's access control work. Level 2 is deriving test case from security requirements. So there's a dependency in a model. If you don't have security requirements, you'll not be able to do this. And then level 3 is doing regression testing, automating this, making sure that whenever there's a new release, that you're retesting everything. Level 1, 2, and 3. The second stream is abuse case testing. It's doing like the level 1 is like doing fuzzing, throwing everything at it, seeing if it fails. Level 2 is doing this a way more smarter, doing tests or creating tests based on abuse cases and business logic flaws. And level 3 is really doing hammering the application in terms of denial of service and stress testing. So you see there's an increasing level of maturity for this particular security practice. And that's how the model really works. And I would say this presentation, I will not give us time to go over all the 15 security practices, but if you understand this, you understand every security practice and how that works. Now, that's all good and fine. We now have these security practices, but what do we do against those? How can we measure ourselves against that? And there comes the assessment part. For every security activity, there is a question. In this case, for instance, as part of governance, strategy and metrics level 1, stream, create, and promote, there's the goal there is, do you align your AppSec program on your organization risk? And the very basic question is, do you, as an organization, do you understand your risk and are you prioritizing your AppSec program based on that? That's the basic question. And you're doing that to a certain level in your organization. What's new with 2.0 is that there's quality metrics or quality questions underneath. So you need to understand that you have to align or get that risk appetite from your leadership, has to be vetted by them. You really should understand your main business and technical threats, and then they should be available in some kind of documented way to the relevant stakeholders. So those are quality criteria that are part of the assessment, which is something that we introduced as part of the 2.0. So how does this work? In your first step, when you are, I would say, appointed as being the one who does or starts an AppSec program, make sure you understand how the model works. Pick your scope. My recommendation is start small, start with one team or one product, do an assessment. And the assessment is not like sending them out like the full spreadsheet that I'm going to show you later on. No, typically this is done in workshop mode, understanding what they're doing and translating that to the questions in SAMM. Then together with your stakeholders, set your target, like what's the right maturity level for us? create a plan to close that, implement that. There's lots of resources and guidances that I'm going to show, and then you roll out your program and you're starting to improve in iterations. That's actually how SAMM works. Now, in terms of consuming SAMM, I'll show you there's the website, everything underneath, I would say, in terms of our own CI/CD pipeline to create the SAMM website, the model, and so on, is in GitHub. It's a single source of truth. And whenever there's changes, updates to the model, there's a couple of actions within GitHub that push that to our website, that regenerate all the documents, the tools, and so on. I'll demonstrate that later on. Other sources are our Google Drive, where there's presentations like this one, GitHub, and the website. So with that, let me first demonstrate how you can do that, or what you can see. So you have the OWASP SAMM website. We have getting started, which explains a little bit the steps like prepare, assess, and so on, like I've shown. You have the SAMM assessment, which I'll show you in a minute. And then you have the benchmark. And that's really what I'm going to explain later on as well. When you start, you'll definitely start with an assessment in most of the cases. There's a couple of guidance around that. There's a couple of tools around that. One tool I'm going to show you is what we call like the toolbox. It's actually a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. So I'd say most of the things can be done with Excel. So you can download it here. I've already opened it up like here. And it's actually the same kind of questions that I've explained earlier on. Now, what you see here is the different streams and the questions. Now, let me go, for instance, for training and awareness. Now, it definitely helps to go first to the model on the website, which you'll find actually here. Not too hard, the model, where you see the same structure, where you can drill down in each aspect of each security practice, like education and guidance, where you have an overview, the two streams, training and awareness, and here you have like what the benefit is, the activity description, questions, and so on, and the quality criteria. And this is how the model looks like with a maturity level 1, 2, and 3. So this is how you can understand and I would say go over the different activities, understand how they work. And then the spreadsheet themselves, once you go to a team and want to understand what they're doing, is do they have some testing actually? Do you require employees involved with application development? Do you require to take SDLC development or training? And then it's drop down, it's no, some, at least half, or yes, most of all of them. So say that at least half of them follows training. Remember, double check the quality criteria. There's a couple of questions around that. So is it up to date? Do you require new employees to follow this training and so on? A level 2 question, if you think you are on level 2 maturity, is to figure out if there's some role-based training. So if there's maybe some security testing, or there are security champions that get training, or maybe some of them have training. Level 3 activity here. So if you go into in the model, level 3 is really focused on a learning management system, having that in place. Probably most organizations don't, so let's say it's a no. You see here at the right side that the rating here is going to change. So every time we change something here, this rating goes up, and this is actually the maturity level of the training and awareness or the education and guidance, actually, security practice. So if you do this, you are on, I would say, already half a maturity level. And so there's some scoreboards involved. In this case, there's not a lot of exciting things to see because we haven't filled in everything, but you can already see here that some changes were, I would say, reflected. But once you fill in the whole questionnaire, there's a spider chart being filled up and so on. The same tool, you can also create your roadmap and so on, but that would bring us too far. So that's how I would say the model works. The model can be consumed, the spreadsheet can be used. There's also other tools that you can use to do assessments. So if you want to, they're pointed here. So there's SAMMI is an online tool, but also we have Samwise, and I have a local version of Samwise running right here. So if you don't like spreadsheets, or if you don't have Microsoft tooling, some of us don't, then you can perfectly download this single page application and also have like an assessment based on that. So let me show you how that works. So for instance, strategy and metrics. If you would go to education and guidance, you have the same kind of questions here as we have shown later or earlier on. So you can also do it like that. It's a little bit, I would say, easier if you want to do it like that. It's also the single page application that you can host yourself. So that's how, in a nutshell, how SAMM works. Now, if you know SAMM, there's nothing new under the sun, like they say in Dutch. I don't know if it's an English proverb or not, but we have not been sitting still. Again, a Dutch proverb, like since 2020, we've been doing quite some changes. And late 2022, we did a questionnaire, like finding out how it's being used, what the input was of our SAMM users and so on. We were really surprised that we had a lot of responses and inputs, quality input, like more than 150 participants, a lot of internal practitioners applying SAMM really on internally, typically on a business unit level, building a program. There's an overall SAMM maturity level of 1.2, and there were some great suggestions to improve, and a lot of them want to contribute also to the benchmark. Suggestions that were captured was providing SAMM for teams and products, also doing mappings towards ISO 27000, NISTs, and so on, benchmarking and more guidance. And that's actually what we're going to do. With a couple of details on the questionnaire. So from all the respondents, about 50% were internally, about 1/3 were external practitioners, like I would say consultants delivering some services, and then 1/4 were, I would say, subject or victim, if you would like, of the assessment or some implementation. In terms of assessment, and these are only a couple of highlights that the typical respondents did. Some of them did none. Maybe they were, I would say, the subjects of these assessments, and then about half 1 to 5. And then quite some people, more than 6, some even more than 11, some more than 20, and even a couple of people that did more than 50 assessments. So that's huge. That's either working for a very big organization or doing a lot of consulting. In terms of industries that we got responses from, by far the technology industry responded, then government, industrial, healthcare. We did make a little mistake, and I will fix that with the next one, is that we did not have finance as a separate industry, but based on respondents, we had about 19. So they're definitely in the top 5, and they would have probably been in the top 3 if there was a selection possibility. In terms of spread over size of organizations, SAMM is being used by any type or any size of organization. That's clearly reflected in our survey. We even saw from like less than 100. So for small organizations, the majority were between 100 and 1,000 employees, but even for bigger, like more than 10,000, and even 6 respondents, more than 100,000 employees. So overall, good coverage. And then one of the main questions is, like, on average, what's your score in terms of maturity overall, your practices? And then you see that about say 13% is less than 0.6. So I would say on the less mature side, about 1/3 is between 0.6 and 1.2. So that's, I would say, on average what you'd expect. And then 40% is also quite high, between 1.2 and 1.8. And then you have some outliers towards the really high maturity levels. We calibrated that, the responses, and we come out with an average of about 1.2. There's one number in terms of average maturity levels. It's 1.2. We have also all the details of the average, I would say, maturity levels of the 5 business functions and so on. But that's, if you want that, have a look at the overall results. One of the questions that we also asked is, would you recommend SAMM to a friend or colleague? That's a typical question you see a lot. And there I'm very pleased that there was a huge majority of people that would be recommending it. There's a couple of outliers. Either they don't like it, or they maybe mistook the question the other way around. Let's hope for that. But that was the questionnaire. Now we learned a lot, and we also got quite some positive feedback on, okay, that we're doing the right thing. Now in terms of 2.1, I'm going to skip over a couple of slides here, but there's going to be a release of these slides and a presentation on typical SAMM implementation for development teams. Like if you're a developer, or if you're in a development team, you want to start, don't go for the big bang approach. We have like what we call like a very, I would say the critical path, if you'd call it like that. So it's the critical part of the SAMM practices or that a typical development team would go over threat assessment, starting with threats, understanding your threats, making sure you capture requirements, obviously secure build, secure deploy, doing some testing in terms of requirements testing and security testing. That's what we call the critical part for developers. I'm going to skip over these because that would bring us too far. And then we have the 5 pillars supporting that: policy compliance, education, defect management, environment management, operational management. Typically for developers, those are the important touch points with the rest of the organization. What we've also done is we've released Samwise as a tool. I've just shown you what the assessment looks like, but there are also great reports. You can also save your Samwise results and load it in again. So this is a tool we released. We also released as part of 2.1, I would say release candidate, the PDF version. So if you're looking for that PDF version, we're going to create like a resources, I would say overview, but if you go to the model and you want to have everything in one PDF version, there's a PDF version download here. It's quite a document, so don't print it. It's over 300 pages, save those trees. But if you want to have everything in one file, sometimes easy to search over the document, then you can download that there. Then a couple of questions that we really responding with 2.1. A question we get a lot is, okay, we're now looking at deploying or adopting SAMM, but we don't have really a clue on how to do this. We need some help. Do you have some more guidance on beyond the model itself? We've actually done that. We've started to introduce some guidance. Let me show you where to find that. So stream guidance, under guidance. What we've done is, besides the model, we have added guidance to every stream. You can also actually contribute yourself. I'm going to show you how you can do that, but there is a Google form for each of the streams where you can submit your own guidance. There's some basic aspects to provide. And then we provide guidance for projects, like linked projects, mapping to standards, best practices, links to external tools, and so on. They are also linked to the maturity level. Now, where can we find this? Actually, it's in the model itself at this stage. If we go again to our education and guidance, we go to training and awareness. So you see here, we had our description. If you scroll down, you see stream guidance. So this is new. We've activated this like only a couple of weeks ago. And the way we've done this is that all the guidance is actually per stream organized in our Google Docs, and you can find this in for every guidance. Actually, every stream you have extra guidance. So for, in this case, education, we have a couple of linked projects. One of the next chapter meeting in the Netherlands is OWASP Bootstrap. It's a perfect tool for doing training and awareness. So obviously, we've added that. It's a maturity level 1 OWASP project. OWASP Top 10 is meant to be an awareness tool, a training tool. OWASP Security Shepherd, OWASP Security Knowledge Framework, which you're going to see later on. OWASP API Top 10, OWASP Wrong Secrets, and so on. What we've also started to do is do mappings mappings between other standards and other models, like for instance, directly map to BSIM conducts software security training. So you can jump from one model to the other. So we're going to add more and more of these mappings and so on. So that's how the guidance looks like. And so for every stream, we've, I would say, bootstrapped the minimum number of guidance. Now, this is by no means complete. And I would really encourage you and ask you explicitly if you have positive experience with implementing a couple of aspects as part of your SAMM implementation, and you see, okay, we can probably add this to guidance, then there's a link here, community guidance. Also, sorry, here there's a link here. Do you want to contribute? Complete this Google form. And so what we've done is we've automated this through Google form. And so we're regenerating all these guidance pages based on input. The only thing is that you need to do is add your email address, select your stream, select the category, see what levels are applicable, the title, the URL, some description, the rationale why this is really applicable, and some tags in camel case that you want to add. You submit this, and this is going to be processed by the core team and vetted, and if deemed okay, will be put in there, or maybe in changed format will be added to the guidance. So we do some curation on the, I would say, community guidance to make sure there's no, I would say, SAMM spamming. But this is how we can capture input for adding more guidance to the model. And this is actually a huge step forward, something that really, really happy with, but that we added this. We've also got some really good feedback and also already some contributions, which we're going to integrate in the next couple of weeks and months, obviously. So that's the guidance, which I've just shown you. Now, that's one of the questions we get a lot. Another question is, okay, that's all good and fine, but we don't have internal knowledge, or we can't do that, or we need external help. Can you recommend a company organization to do this? Now, this is a hard question. We're a bunch of volunteers. We are, I would say, what we call vendor agnostic. We can't recommend any companies. Probably some of us are working for organizations and companies from a professional point of view, but there is strict, I would say, Chinese wall between what we do as a volunteer and as professionally working in our day job. So what we've done is we've started a list of practitioners. And this is a list of practitioners where we don't endorse, recommend, or favor any of them. So the full disclaimer is there. But we really offer this list of some practitioner as a service to anyone who is looking for them, because we get questioned a lot anyway. And the way to get on that list is, well, you just have to ask us. And there's a link on how you can do that. The only requirements that there are is that you need to have on your website a clear description of what you're offering, and there has to be a link, or you have to name OWASP SAMM as supporting that. And you also have to provide a backlink to our website, which from, I would say, from the support from our marketing guy from SAMM is really good, because the higher the number of backlinks, the better our SEO ranking. But besides that, these are the basic requirements. Now, from a, I would say, purely process point of view, this is well defined as a process as vetting them. We are vetting just these kind of aspects. And if there's any, I would say, objection or I would say complaint, then we'll look at that. And if there's something that would be a good reason to remove it, we will also reserve the right to reject or remove practitioners if that is deemed necessary. Now, let me just show you how that works. It's under community practitioners. Here is who to contact. Again, our disclaimer. And here in alphabetical order, the organizations where you can link, and the link is actually the link to their service page. We are adding aspects like if they have like contributors working for them, or if they are a sponsor. And so it's just added. And then obviously in alphabetically ordered, you see all the practitioners that are in there currently. but we already starting to get more and more questions to be added to this list. So that's actually, so if you want to be on that list, just send an email to info@owaspsam.org and you'll get on there. So that's actually how that part works, and has been deemed very useful by our community. And it will also help us bootstrap something later on, which I'll explain. We've also started to do mappings. I'm going to go over this quicker to leave time for Q&A. We are adding mapping to NIST Secure Software Development Framework version 1.1. It's completely mapped to 2.0 and it's actually released quite recently. This is the link to that mapping. Upcoming mappings that we're doing are 27,000, SDL, and so on. And then benchmarking. One of the questions in our survey was, how important is it for you or your organization to compare against peers? 70% said 7 or higher on 10. So we've made this a #1 priority for the next year. And the really good feedback and really good input is that more than 70% of the respondents would be able or would be willing to contribute data for that benchmark. So we're going to hold them up that promise. So we're doing that in the next couple of weeks. So in terms of work, the data model has been created. Infrastructure is being set up to, I would say, gather inputs. We're going to explain very transparently how we are going to do this and how you can fill in or add your own data or submit your own data. Actually, we're also going to ask the practitioners if they can provide us. And if you are sitting on a SAMM assessment that you think would be useful to donate in an anonymous way to the benchmark track, please feel free, get in contact with us, because we're going to capture the data sets in the database over the next couple of months. And the first release will be an in-depth analysis as a report. So it will not be like a data set, it will be a report in the first number of instances. So we're capturing feedback of our use cases. And so we're adding practitioner and assessment guidance and so on to publish towards our first SAMM benchmark report in 2023. And that's actually where we're at in terms of 2.1. So we're pushing a lot of stuff from the project, but also capturing a lot of community input. If you're interested in contributing, get in touch. The best ways to get in touch to us is with our Slack channel. Let me show that. Slack channel is here. So Project SAMM. If you don't know how to get on there, on the website, on the FAQ, you'll find how to get on there. There are also links to the website and our YouTube channel and so on, the meetup that we've started. So if you want to be informed of upcoming some community calls, please feel free to reach us there. And obviously our newsletter. We would thank our sponsors for making this possible. And then that will leave us some time for Q&A, actually. I'll pause here. And then let's check, Edwin, if there's any questions that are coming in or that have come in. Anyone there?
Okay, then, well, thank you for this presentation. I do see the first questions pouring in the chat, so let's start right away. The first, is adopting a SAMM even feasible for really small companies like a startup?
Short answer is yes. You just need to pick the ones that are the practices that are important for you. I would definitely have a look at the critical path I've shown you, but yes, you can.
All right. And there was a question that disappeared right now. What advice would you give to people wanting to start their own OWASP project? Oh, that's sort of not specifically related to.
Well, it's a more generic question. Well, actually, it's make sure don't do this alone. Capture, or I would say gather a couple of other people that are also interested in starting this project with you, so that you have a critical mass to start it up, and have what we call a minimal viable product, something to show for. And then it's really simple. If you go to OWASP, then on OWASP.org projects, there is who should start an OWASP, who should start an OWASP project, and so on. So there's definitely guidance here that you can find to start a new project. Like here you are, start a new project. You just have to fill in a form. The only thing you need to do.
Well, it's easy as that, basically.
There you go.
A new question. We have multiple projects with different levels of maturity. How to handle the evaluation process? Is it better to maintain multiple spreadsheets, or is there another way?
I would recommend to keep your separate spreadsheets, because it doesn't really make sense to manage through a aggregated score unless you want to have like to report an aggregated score. But on a team level or on the scope level that you're doing your assessment, it really makes sense to keep that particular level in mind. So it will mean that you'll have to maintain a couple of different spreadsheets per scope level that you're assessing and implementing.
All right. So Teamsmaster, Nariman, and Jaya, thank you for the questions. If you have any further questions, you can ask them, well, perhaps later in this call, or you can send them to us by mail. And now
my contact details are also on the slide here, info@owaspsam.org. If they're on general on the SAM project, if you want to get in touch directly with me, it's seba@owasp.org. So I do respond to email. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer, but feel free to get in touch.
All right. Well, sir, thank you very much. And that means I don't see any other questions popping up. We're going to prepare for our next speaker. For the rest of you,
all right, great.
We'll be back in roughly 10 minutes. So thank you all. And please stay with us. In 10 minutes, the next presentation will start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome back. Or if you've just joined the stream, welcome to the OWASP chapter meeting of January 2023. Today we're now ready for our second speaker, Cate, who is talking about the Security Knowledge Framework. If you missed the previous presentation, it was from Sebastien Deleersnyder on bootstrapping your security with the Software Assurance Maturity Model. You can watch it back either on YouTube or later through OWASP.nl. But for now, Cate with his talk about the Security Knowledge Framework. Glenn, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, and very nice to be here again. Brings back so many good memories being in the OWASP chapter and doing presentations. So tonight I want to talk about the Security Knowledge Framework. There is no right and wrong, only fun and boring. I'm going to give you a sort of a scenario why we actually created the Security Knowledge Framework, which type of nice features we have into it. Also a use case, how we actually applied it in the company I currently work for, and how we actually structured this and use it in a whole security maturity program and actually creating security champions. I also wanted to give you a sort of a preview of the ideas we're also playing with, looking forward, like improving the whole platform. So I'm also going to give a short overview about that, and to see if people are interested to share some thoughts and give some feedback about it, maybe later on. All right. So for people who don't know me, my name is Cate. I started actually, doing security more than 20 years ago. Playing Unreal Tournament was my favorite game, and actually, quite quickly, I started actually hacking the game, building my own aimbot in it. Basically shooting automatically, auto-firing headshots on public servers, and that was quite fun. So this is how I actually enrolled into security. Now 20 years forward, I'm the security chapter leader of ING Belgium. And of course, next to that, I'm also one of the creators of the Security Knowledge Framework, one of the OWASP flagship projects, together with my brother Ricardo. I'm also serving now as a global board of director in the OWASP community. So why did we actually started, the Security Knowledge Framework like 8 years ago? Because currently, when I was working at that time at a company, we actually had a quite problematic challenge, right? I was working at a company that did like full agile, full DevOps already. And they released between 10 to 40 times a day. So there was a lot of, speed involved in there. And of course, they said to me like, hey, you're the security guy. So how can we, be, aligned with our proper security development, making sure we are in control, that we don't have vulnerabilities. And they're actually the whole challenge game of like how to implement security in DevOps, right? Of course, when you look at the traditional security development lifecycle, right, and these are just a couple of the quality gates and a couple of the requirements, I would say, that you want to embed when you be talking about a secure software development lifecycle. You think about security requirements, right? If you don't start with the right security requirements, well, then it's really already sort of say doomed, the project you're trying to build and maintain. So it all starts with good security requirements. And luckily, OWASP got your back there. We have the ASVS, the Application Security Verification Standard. If you're building mobile applications, you get the same good stuff only for mobile. You can also look a bit further, right? You have a good sort of say requirement list from the NIST and other organizations, but it really starts with defining and having good security requirements. Well, of course, test automation, code quality, for example, dead-end code, repudiation code, overcomplicated code, all that kind of stuff is also impacting security, right? So also these things you want to actually embed as quality gates in your secure software development lifecycle. And take, for example, these type of things, the code quality for code. If you have like overcomplicated code, guess what? That's where all your business logic vulnerabilities will be in, right? Now, then more into the area where we as security are mostly concerned about is the security test automation, like the static analysis tooling, dynamic tooling, or of course, the new cool stuff, the interactive security testing tooling. Well, and of course, all these tools and automation, that's all very nice, but of course, there's always the manual verification, right? The secure code audits that you do, the penetration test. So in my opinion, here are just a couple of examples that will actually, well, when you don't do security properly, it will be like a nice Christmas tree, right? They will lit up and you have a lot of work to do. So if we do that, then we have, of course, a problem, because they also give like good results, like positives, right? Correct findings, but there is also false positives. So false positives is basically the tool saying that there is a vulnerability, but actually when researching and identifying and looking up, it turns out it's not. And we have another OWASP project actually that's trying to make this visible as well, and where you can do sort of benchmark testing to see how well a certain tool reacts to the different like type of vulnerabilities, how well it will find them. And that's the OWASP benchmark project. So as you see in the left upper corner, that's the ideal situation, right? Because there we have the 100% true positive rate, meaning it will find all the vulnerabilities. And of course, over the right axle, we have the false positive rate. So that would be 0. That would be awesome because all the findings would be valid. Now, reality, and I must say this picture is a bit old. It is not super up to date, but still same type of result, I would say, come back. If you look like the traditional SAS, DOS, and those type of tooling, yeah, they don't score well. You see that, right? Take, for example, here, the average Q. Q is around, what, 50, let's say 50%, 30%. So yeah, that means if 1% would be one vulnerability, that means almost half would be false positives that you need to go through and then identify like, oh shit, this is actually the false positive, right? Now also the other thing is that what will like tools like SAS and DOS will never ever find, right? Because it doesn't have context. So what it will never ever find are like business logic vulnerabilities, like IDORs or whatever, because they don't have the context. So they will not find those type of vulnerabilities. So that means if you look at this percentage of vulnerabilities that they're actually capable of, then actually it's not like a 25%, but it is even half of it. Because normally when we look at the total amount of vulnerabilities, we conduct like 50% is around 50% is business logic, and the other 50% is like misconfigurations, injections, and so on. So actually, just to clarify that it's even worse than the picture we are showing off here, right? Because of all the business logic that cannot be tested automatically by these security tools. Now, why we also created the security knowledge framework, because like I said, I'm doing now security for more than 20 years, a lot of pen tests and code reviews. And, even 8 years ago when we did, the testing, we found out it's always the same stuff, right? It's always the same, how do you say, the same issues that pop up. And we're having like these coding and deja vus the whole time, right? And also, if we look at the developers, I mean, the developers are actually pretty awesome, right? They are like Neo, doing like amazing stuff, building this, connecting digital bridges and making our life easier. And in my eyes, they are like the Neos, right? Be able to, play with reality, sort of say, with the matrix and change or influence it. But unfortunately, they are really just barely hanging on, trying to dodge those bullets, meaning vulnerabilities, dealing with security issues. And of course, they're Neo, so they're able to dodge them and deal with them. But, it's Neo, man. He shouldn't have to be dodging bullets, remember? Because he is the one. So from that mindset, we thought, look, to really tackle all these problems, and we need to go back to the root. And the root is to nurture and help Neo, right? To show him the options, show him the path, and enlighten him what he's actually capable of. And when we also look around, right, in our industry, we see these huge, news articles, this huge pressure and push for people actually to train themselves, because people now realize, like, we have a shortage of security people. We have developers that need to better learn and understand how to build secure and safe applications. We need to help and give like opportunity for people to do this in a correct and free way, right? And I think that's even more important, that we have this place where people can actually get this knowledge for free and educate themselves. So the whole idea of the security knowledge framework and the initiative we started 8 years to develop skills for developers to actually fight back. To weaponize them, to learn them how attackers actually hack stuff and abuse functionality in applications. And then also come with like design patterns and information, what they should do to actually prevent these type of things, right? So they are properly prepared to fight and have an equal fight actually, right? Now, what I wanted to do as well is just show you, the demo of the security knowledge framework. I don't know, which is the last time you actually looked at it. We did a lot of improvements as well, constantly, improving further and making things better. So maybe it's a good idea to step out for a bit from the presentation and just show you a bit around through the security knowledge framework. So basically here, as you can see, we have like 4 focus areas for the developers, for the penetration tester, training and labs, and customization of checklists. So for you and everybody to know, again, to really empower people, developers, pen testers with the right set of knowledge, right? So for example, one of the things that we have are the checklists. Here you have the web application checklist, aka the ASVS. We have the mobile checklist, aka the MASVS. As you also saw, you can customize checklists in SKF, so you can actually take the ASVS or the MASVS or build a whole new checklist that is applicable and can be used in your own internal organization. And the cool thing about when you actually have those checklists in the security knowledge framework, you can actually use them later in the expert wizard flow. I will show you that in a bit. But here we have a couple of predefined security checklists. Like I said, for example, the ASVS that you see over here. Here are all the items from the ASVS. As people know who are familiar with the ASVS, it's a very in-depth and covering security standard, right? So it has for all the different categories, security requirements that may be applicable inside your organization. One of the key important things also is from the ASVS is that you actually always have to customize it to your own organization or even per project, right? So this is also a bit where the security knowledge framework will come in, because it will actually give you the possibility to do that. But as you can see, so here we have the checklist, all the requirements that normally go in there. And what we also did, we have a read more function, and we'll actually correlate one of the knowledge base items that we have over here as well in the security knowledge framework to all these different security requirements. And again, the idea is to give you more understanding, giving you more context about the security requirement that you need to implement. And also like the mitigation, so in which stage and phase you actually should do what, right? Because that's also important that you do it in the right process, in the right location when you're dealing with these type of requirements. And again, so here we have a checklist where you can easily browse over all the requirements, click on the different requirements, get like more information. Sometimes not like this one, or here a bit more, but at least give you more context about what is actually expected from you when we're dealing with this security requirement. Like I mentioned also, we have the knowledge base section. So here it has like 500 different knowledge base items, and these are all used later, like in the security requirements or in other things, right? So here, for example, a path reversal, file directory, example 4, well, the whole explanation of what it is, what an attacker can do, what you should do to prevent it. Like, for example, do not use a blacklist where you filter on ... because an attacker can use the ... slash to then still be able to do the path reversal. Yeah, so we have here a whole knowledge database, as you can see, of all type of knowledge base items. So this is basically sort of your Google for security jargon, where you actually can find good stuff back. And actually get more information about certain topics, right? A bit about XML injection or blind exploit injection and so on. So these knowledge base items are also, like I mentioned, reused, correlated through the right security requirements, for example, ASVS or MASVS. So it gives you more context about what we're actually doing. The other thing that we have are code examples. So what we actually did here, we have like ASP.NET, Java, Django, Flask, Go, couple of that, Ruby. And basically here we're talking about, okay, you want to have a remote file download, for example, how do you build that? And it's not the idea that you actually copy these functions, but it's just more the approach and the methodology on how you would, as a developer, build the safety mechanisms into the function to make sure that's actually secure. For example, the whitelist approach that is here. I don't see here the logging, but for example, in some of the examples as well, we go really in depth about how you should log when a certain route in your application is being called. Because also here it's very important to understand that before you actually going into a route and you start the function that you call, hey, the user started this function with the user ID, the IP, the date, etc. And then that you actually expect an error or a success message. And this is very important because normally what you see is people only logging like failures and errors and exceptions. But actually, you also want to know when you have a success, because if you log as well success as errors, then you can actually already say like, hey, the user entered this function, but I didn't get an error or success message. Guess what? That's a 100% hit in your scene that shit went wrong, right? And meaning shit went wrong, somebody popped your function and exploited it because it never came to that point, right? Similar for like the success, if you're missing the success or the error, again, that's a good sign, a very credible sign that you can act in your scene that something is definitely not going good there, right? Think about a reverse TCP shell. If you pop that in the middle of a function, yeah, then you will never go to the error or the success message, right, in your logging. So just to give a very simple, example about logging and how important something simple like that actually can be in making your application secure, but also in terms of monitoring and acting. When you do see those things that you know something is wrong and you can act upon. So this is what we try to do here in the code examples. A lot of examples, we wrote the top, like 30 most used functionalities, in applications, and we actually added them here in different programming languages. Now, the other thing, which actually all other things will get together, and as you can see, a lot of people are trying this functionality and using it, is basically the expert system. So to get the right security requirements, you don't want to go over all the chapters, for example, in ASVS, go over all the security requirements, and then handpick the ones that might be interesting for the feature or the project you're delivering, right? That's like a very intensive type of work. especially if you're going to release a couple of times a day or even a couple of times a week, you know, it can really add up, you know, to really filter and check and go through it. So what we did, we created an expert wizard in the knowledge framework, which we actually will generate context by asking questions to the developer. And because we ask questions and we have context, we can then say, then these requirements are applicable for you. And so we have here the design patterns, for example, for the ASVS, when you're doing, I don't know, business logic verification. So here, these would be the requirements that would be in scope for you, if you're doing something. But of course, what you also can do is generate your own requirements. So here we then enter the expert wizard, where we can basically select, hey, we want to do a web application or mobile or custom checklist. For this example, I will check the web. And then we can say, okay, maturity level. So is it a very sensitive and a banking application, for example, that we're building? You should pick level 3. And here then the category. So for example, if I would build in this imaginary, you know, project, and I'm going to build like a search functionality, then I can see here, like, okay, I'm going to build a search functionality. Then I want to do something with validation, maybe error handling. And yeah, I think that's it actually. So I click those two on, I go next, I get these questions. Do you need generic input? Well, let's say, yes, this is the first feature I built. No, this would not be applicable. This one, outputting user supplied input, yes, because we're going to give back the result that the user searched on. Things from file, no. Are you using a database? Yeah, we're going to search in a database. LDAP, no, 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 no. Does the application do actively logging? Well, let's say we didn't have that yet, so we say yes. All right, so we say to these yes, we go next. Here we can actually create a new feature under this project, or we say, hey, add these requirements that are going to be generated to already an existing one. That could also be the case. But let's say we are now making a new feature, so new search. And when we now submit it, what the security knowledge framework will do is now, based on the context and the questionnaire, actually now correlate with the right security requirements, which would be applicable then. So here we have it, search, new search, the results. And now these security requirements would be applicable for that search feature, right? That me as a developer was going to build. So before you start programming, you go through the expert wizard, you click the areas, you click then and fill in the expert wizard. And now security knowledge framework basically went through the 280 security requirements in ASVS and selected these based on the questionnaire that you so you don't have to go over all those items anymore. The security knowledge framework in the wizard will actually do that for you. And you see like parameter pollution attack, mass parameter assignment, that can be an issue, whitelisting for output and input validation, of course, strongly typed. Let's see, here we have the parameterized queries for preventing SQL injection, preventing cross-site scripting injection. So here you have all the information that you actually need, and enrich your feature request with the additional security requirements to build it actually properly by design when you're building that feature. Again, you can click here for more information. So we have like reference sheets to like the cheat sheet, for example, here about parameter assignments. So here we have even more in-depth information about another OWASP project, the cheat sheet series, or here to this Mitre website where you can find also more information about it. Yeah, so you have everything what you need to actually educate and make sure you understand the requirement properly to actually then implement it in a secure way. Of course, you can copy them. You can then paste them in your favorite system or export them as a CSV to then upload them in another system that you might use. So this is the projects for security requirements generation and gathering. And of course, what we also wanted to do to make the circle whole complete is not only focus about security development, security requirements, but also teaching those developers what actually hackers do. How do they abuse their functionalities, right? So what we did a while ago already is creating labs. And as you can see, we have here tons of labs in it. I think we have around 90 labs. And what we also have is the juice shop. So technically, if you want, you can also just spin up from the security knowledge framework, you can spin up a juice shop, and then you have your own dedicated juice shop running, which you can then, practice and do all the good stuff with. So we also have that capability that you can run juice shop. That we have also built our own labs. So for example, if I go here and the local found inclusion, the path reversal, we can start it. You get again a URL back. Oop, go here. And here we have our lab. Now, why did we do this? Because we wanted to focus very much on purely the functionality that is vulnerable, right? So they're not big applications, they're very small, mostly only one or two type of functions in it, because we really want to focus actually on the vulnerability itself. So here we have the local file inclusion. So we see here we have a pull down. Okay, cool. We can select all these things. Well, as a developer, you will think like, yeah, I built stuff like this before. Awesome. So you would technically then read into the write-up, like, what is it? A local file inclusion. Well, most of you, I hope, already know that when you see options like this with a full, like a path and a text file, then probably you can just change that. If the developer didn't do any input validation, change it, submit it, and boom, we can now read files locally from the server. If you might be not so aware of these type of vulnerabilities and you would need some help, what you can also do is then go to the write-ups. So when you click write-ups, you see that we currently have actually 3 programming languages, which we have like 90 labs in, Python, Java, Spring, and Node.js. In this case, we are doing a Python, so I will click that one. And over here, again, you will see explained what is the problem, how do you do the reconnaissance, what is interesting tell signs, and then, of course, how can you exploit it, right? Again, additional resources to OWASP, like, hey, how do you test for local file inclusions, for example? And there you go. Awesome. So the write-ups also will help you when you're stuck or you're new to it and want to learn more about the vulnerabilities, right? Then the other thing that we actually did is we are building a hacking operating system that is actually going to be used as a professional usage from a command line, but also as a distro that you can also later use for your machine. And in there, we're going to actually embed like security tooling, but also developer tools to actually help and do code reviews and audits. We also have one now that will work from the browser, because that was one of the issues that we also had in the past when we were training security champions, that they were not always able to install like software on the laptop, or they had like the wrong version or stuff like that. So here we have now, a fully working web-based, RDP basically, right? Using the Apache Guacamole technology stack, which gives you a full access to a real computer environment. This also has a browser, right? So you can actually use the browser to go to things. What it also has is, for example, a code editor or Visual Studio Code. Depends a bit like which you prefer more. And in here you will find, for example, all the labs that we have currently. So here are all the Python labs. So let's go again to, let's say, the local file inclusion. So this one, open. Yeah, and here you have then the source of that application. So the cool thing about this is that you actually now can run this application locally. It will work out of the box because it has the right Python version and whatnot in this guacamole. Start it and boot it. And actually, when you then have it running, you can just go to the browser and you can start hacking it locally. But also, because we have access, we can also start fixing the application, right? So, for example, let me add this port here. Let's see, there is also a runner script that you can use to actually do it automatically. I had to start and run a Python lab. Of course, because I did it so many times, I don't use the runner script. I do the commands manually, but yeah, the runner script is there to help you. Then basically what we can do is now start. Oh, I see I need to use Python 3 here. And it will start the application. So it's now running locally. So if I go to this browser here and I type in localhost, boom, there we have the application. Yeah, and now locally I can actually test it, verify it, hack it, and all that good stuff. And also because I have the source code, I actually can play with the different implementations and design patterns to properly fix the vulnerability. But that is not it. You know, we have more. The cool stuff is as well, we have some cool automation and tooling here as well installed, right? So for example, you can also run Zap to then point to your implementation that you built, the application, the lab, to see if you actually properly fix the application, right? By using Zap as an extra quality gate to see if it's still fixed, yes or no. So you can just here, automatic scan, pop, local host 1337, attack, and as you can see, Zap is now scanning the application for vulnerabilities. And with this, we could also, again, get a second verification, right, if the vulnerability is properly solved or not. As you see, it finds the cross-site scripting, but also the most important for this one, the path reversal, as you can see here. Yeah, and again, this all runs from your browser. So even if you don't have like admin access to your computer or can't install tools, whatever, we got you. We have a full environment here, which actually can help you out and still be able for you to learn and play in a safe environment with these applications and secure coding. So that is that. The other thing actually that we also did to make this story a bit more complete, we are also now focusing on training profiles and sort of learning paths, right? So we have one for secure development, for hacking, infra, OWASP. So we have a couple of OWASP as well, like the OWASP top 10. So here you get the whole list of the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities or the content of it. It also
let me just make sure the clicker is doing.
It also plays videos that we can embed inside the training paths. Yeah, and basically you can also from the security knowledge framework consume all this information and all this good stuff, as you can see. Now the other thing is also what we did is, for example, the next steps. So let's say you're done with, or you do a certain category and we have like a lab available for it, then you get an additional button that says start lab. And basically with this one, it will then deploy one of the hacking operating systems, like here, poof. And here you have the full environment where you can learn and play with the things you just learned, right? There's a hint system in it. You can say, hey, show me the write-up for this stuff. Poof, you go to the write-ups. Yeah, so we embedded that all as well inside the security knowledge framework and the learning environment. For the secure development, we use the training from David Wheeler, the secure software development fundamentals, very interesting and in-depth course, and open source. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, so again, very in-depth. For the web API security, and this is more offensive, we use the WSTG, the OWASP testing project. Again, an awesome OWASP project. So you can go over all the different things, like, hey, how do you test for cross-site scripting, this approach, that approach, think about this. So we get it all here as well. We also got some questionnaires in it. And we also have labs that will be spinning off and pointing to you like, hey, go do the cross-site scripting lab here in the HackOS environment. So that's the latest edition that we actually added and working on into the security knowledge framework. So that is a bit in a very short nutshell, the different features and tools inside the security knowledge framework that you can use to create better security requirements, train your pen testers doing the labs, train your developers in thinking like a hacker, but also trying to solve these vulnerabilities in a realistic environment. So all that good stuff is there available for the grabs. Yeah, so we're busy, like I mentioned, building and more extending the training environment. Some of the things we actually already implemented, others we still need to polish up. For example, this is actually how the training page material content should look like. But also when we look at the future of the security knowledge framework, we actually are thinking of a couple interesting things. Yeah, so we have the security knowledge framework platform. And now, for example, everything is in a very boring flat database like a SQLite or MySQL database. But our idea is also create like splitting up the security knowledge framework in different tools. Like one of the tools would, for example, be the security requirements. Another tool would be the training section. Another tool would be the labs. Another tool would be the lexicon. So you have all these different tool sets under the security knowledge framework. And one of the other tools that we, like service tools that we identified, is the SKG. This stands for the Security Knowledge Graph. And basically what we want to do is all the material from the lexicon, from the knowledge base item, the labs, the checklist, the write-ups, the course of David Wheeler about secure coding, the course of WSTG, and the material to put this information all in a knowledge graph, right? In a graph database. Because we think also in the future that this tool from the security knowledge framework, aka the SKG, the knowledge graph, can also be very useful for other projects, for example, because it has all this data, all this relationship and correlation, and that would be ideal to feed, for example, into machine learning or AI type of software as well. So yeah, so we are also revamping again the whole front end to make it more flexible, more easy, more UX friendly as well. And next to that, here you see the WSTG course. Thanks to one of the sponsors of the Security Knowledge Framework, Contra Security, we actually are now building also labs to cover all the WSTG requirements, right? So actually, when you want to be a tester or you don't know how to certainly test certain things in the WSTG, in the future we can cover that all because there will be a lab available where you actually can practice those type of security tests as well. So a lot of good stuff is actually happening in the pipeline. Very happy to also receive feedback from you guys if you have ideas on how to further improve or interesting open data, good material that we can use or implement, or just wanting to help, well, please give me a shout on the Slack channel. I'm happy to get you up to speed and work on this together. Now, also good to reflect like, okay, cool, you have awesome stuff, very nice, but okay, give me some practical examples on what did you do with it and what, yeah. So, as you know, I work at ING, and what we did there using the security knowledge framework is actually build a security maturity level. So different levels that will actually give more incentives to the developers and enabling them to actually release in a more secure and quicker way. So the higher the maturity level, the more incentive they have and the more speed they have. And of course, when we look at how you define the security maturity levels, is basically on two different ways. You have the security maturity on a squad level, aka the team, and then you have a security maturity program based on the asset level. And as you can see here, here are then the different criteria that they would need to reach a certain level. Similar, for example, for the application, right? So here again, all type of requirements that they should have to go to a certain maturity level. And of course, in the maturity squad level, one of the requirements is that they have one or two or more security champions. So how do we train people inside ING to become security champions? By following the self-learning course that I just showed you, the material they read, the labs that they do, the write-ups that they read, in a self-learning based way. They go through it, they do then an internal exam, and if they pass the exam, they will be a security champion. So the first step in getting a higher security maturity program and level is doing and using the knowledge and the labs in the security knowledge framework. And of course, we have a couple of other requirements stacked upon that as well, but it all starts with security champions. And that is where we use the security knowledge framework for. So for example, you have a couple of incentives, like a security champion can perform impact assessments, can decide then if a code review needs to be done. And in the other level, if they're a higher level, they can actually do the secure code reviews themselves because they have enough knowledge to do it. They can distinguish the false positives from the true positives. And then, of course, the highest level, squad 4, basically, they are fully in control. They can do everything, and they even decide when a penetration test needs to be done, yes or no. And so here you see the example. The more they invest, the more incentive and speed they will get, which will make their life very happy. Also, not every team needs to be a squad level 4, right? If you just think about the businesses that have a lot of, changing parts, like marketing or front end, export services, they want to go to the level 4 of maturity. But others, they even are fine with level 2 or level 3, right? And that's also okay with us because even for the level 2, you need to have security champions. So this is actually how we embed, the whole security culture inside ING. So if we look at, for example, in Belgium, we have trained now over 300 developers and they are security champions. So that means that for them, they have speed, they have incentive, and they can release code in a secure way, right? Because they are aware of the security requirements, they're aware of the attack vectors, they know how to solve and prevent vulnerabilities. So we endorse them, they are the security champions. And to come back, why the Neo, that's really the developers, they are the one to solve this issue that we have at hand here. And really, we should use SKF and the developers to see those threats up front, that it's not a surprise, that they're going to attack or they're around the corner. And we know they are there and we know how we can counter them because we have learned to fight back. We weaponized ourselves with knowledge, right? Of course, it's about taking also the right decision and making, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? But to be honest, I didn't really see developers that wanted to take the blue pill. They're just like Neo, go for it. They want to learn, they want to improve. And if they do, and they will, we end up with this situation that Neo doesn't have to dodge bullets. Developers know their shit. We just need to help them, make them more aware, and they will be the Neo that can stop the bullets because he is the one. So prepare yourself, get ready, because you got it all ready at your hands. So this was my talk. I hope you guys and girls really liked it. I left a bit of time extra to maybe see if there are still some questions. But yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, well, questions not yet in the chat, but of course they may still pour in as the video is wrapping up. So Glenn, thank you for your presentation, and for everyone, our audience, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. Of course, we hope you enjoyed the show for today. I see there's a first note from Hans Spaans that he says the model really works to improve the quality. Apparently, a colleague of you.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. Or because the thing is, we do this now for 8 years, right? And yeah, we do encounter a lot of people who actually say like, hey, yeah, I know you, and we use it, or I use it to teach or train, or I use the requirements, or so yeah, it's quite nice to hear that it adds a lot of value for people actually in their day-to-day business, right? And yeah, that was the whole concept of it, to help people and yeah, let them shine, let them be able to be in control and actually do something. The only thing you need to do is take the red pill, put in the effort, and you master the skills, right?
Well, we do have some questions. The 16-bit nerd here asks, what type of open positions are there with the project?
Whew. Well, actually, many actually. For example, we are looking for people who could help writing education material. We are looking for people who can help writing Python labs, because like I mentioned, Contra Security did a donation to our project, so we have funds for it available. Still, there are many labs that needs to be built in Python, right, to cover the WSTG. So if you have knowledge about Python and you have some knowledge about security, yeah, you could also help us write labs, and actually we can pay you a small fee for every lab you build actually for the security knowledge framework, thanks to the funds that we got and the sponsorship, right? Also helping, thinking, building the new future SKF with the knowledge graph, for example, the graph database and the services around it. So depending on the skills you have, basically, we probably have a spot for you if you would like to help us out with it.
All right, thank you for the answer. Another question from Eric Newland, I think. Is there already a way to generate OSCAL from SKF?
OSC?
No. OSCAL.
OSCAL. I'm not familiar with that term actually, so maybe you should educate me in this a little bit. But
okay, let's wait for the audience. OSCAL, what does it mean?
of course, I can try to Google it as well, but
Oh, well, in the meantime, there's another question from 16-bit nerd, who also wanted to know what the open positions are. How can one apply for such a position?
Well, the thing is, like, it's an open source project, right? So there's not really like applying. It's just like reaching out to us, on Slack. We are in the OWASP channel under the Security Knowledge Framework project. We also have a Gitter page which you can reach us out. For the people who wants to have some links, For example, if you go to the Security Knowledge Framework, GitHub repository, so SKF Flask, there we have also in the README, we have like the links, for example, here, the OWASP flagship, let me see, the chat on Slack, the chat on Gitter. So both channels in Slack and in Gitter, we are there. Yeah, so you can actually talk with us here. We will help and give support and feedback. You can also always drop an email to one of us. You know, my email is also on the OWASP page, glenn.10.cate@owas.org. You know, just, yeah, say like, hey, I'm interested. I can maybe do ABC, maybe have a short call and see how you could really help us out, right? And work with us to help further improve this project.
All right. Well, let's hope that you get new participants for your project.
That will be awesome.
Okay, I'm afraid that the OSCAL question was not further clarified. So with that, I think it's time to wrap up. Oh, and another thank you from the audience. So thank you very much. And this was the OWASP Netherlands chapter meeting of January 2023. Next meeting, as said before, is on the third Thursday of February, and that will be a virtual meeting as well. In the meantime, thank you all for joining, and have a nice evening.